Hey there YouTube, this is the Lon Chaney Review here with my favorite film series. This is number 6. This is the last film before my top 5, and this number 6 is very important. This is the 1925 silent film version of The Phantom of the Opera, starring Lon Chaney Sr. Now, what are the obvious good things about this film? What are the bad things? And what are the other things that could have changed on this film? Well, I will explain that, but first let me explain the far too obvious plot. Because if you're watching this YouTube channel and you don't know the plot of Phantom of the Opera, then I really don't know what to say for you. Why are you watching this channel? Because this is literally the Lon Chaney Reviews channel. Not the King Kong Reviews channel, not the Godzilla Reviews channel, not the Maltese Falcon Reviews channel, the Lon Chaney Reviewers channel. So, the plot of this film is very simple. You have a deformed musical genius who falls in love with a young ingenue in the name of Christine, played by Mary Philbin, and then she falls in love with a young nobleman, Raoul, and he gets jealous, things go down, chandeliers are crashed, masks are unveiled, operas are sung. It's high silent film melodrama. Now, what are the good things about this film? First off, Chaney himself. His performance, his makeup, his mask even. I mean, I'm just going to take a look at this. I'm just going to analyze his mask here, which is kind of funny. The mask they describe in the book is not the common half mask that you see in the musical. In the book, it's a black mask that covers the entire face. But what Chaney does here, he has a white face, you can't really notice here, but it usually has like rosy cheeks, has like a little flap over here over his mouth, and you can clearly see his mouth, but it's one of the more subtle elements. Like when I watched the film like several times, I didn't see it till much later, but it's kind of obvious, and I feel kind of stupid mentioning that. But his costume looks amazing. I think for me this is the definitive Phantom of the Opera. It's mysterious. He has like the hat, you know, his fingers are like bones. You know, very much a deformed figure, covers his face, you know, nice shoes. And, yeah. But Chaney's makeup and performance convey pathos, tragedy, anger, vengeance. It conveys all sorts of emotions, and this was the silent film that got me into silent films. Because the first two silent films I had ever seen were The Lost World and Nosferatu, and I felt they were okay. But it wasn't until Phantom of the Opera I'm like, I could watch more of these. I could really watch more silent films. And Lon Chaney ultimately became one of my favorite actors, if not my favorite actor, because did I name a YouTube channel after Toshiro Mifune or Humphrey Bogart? I don't think so. I named it after this guy for a reason. And the strength of his performance alone is enough to make it one of the greatest movies of all time. In fact, on the 1001 movies you must see before you die, this film is in that book, which shocks me to high heaven because the film itself isn't the greatest film ever, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But the other great thing about this film is the set design. This is exactly how I envisioned Gaston Leroux's novel. Now, if you didn't know, The Phantom of the Opera is based off of a early 20th century novel, Le Fantôme de l'Opéra by Gaston Leroux, who was a mystery writer at the time, and that's why the novel version of Phantom plays like a mystery, because most people didn't know at the time that the Phantom was a deformed figure. It's kind of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It was such a big twist ending that nowadays we just take it for granted and we know that Jekyll and Hyde are one and the same. Spoiler alert. But yeah, the set design by Ben Carré, he just does a splendid job with this set design. It really looks like a expressionist version of the Paris Opera. And the basements of the Paris Opera are amazing. For me, this is what all versions should strive for, is what this film goes for. It's very mysterious. The walls, I don't know if when I was a kid, not young, and I was a kid, but when I first saw this, I always thought that the place would smell like an indoor swimming pool. Not like a sewer. I don't know why. Probably because the walls look like concrete. or whatever, and then it makes me think of an indoor swimming pool. But anyway, it's kind of like it has cool stuff in it, but it's kind of yucky because where it is. And also, interesting note, the bed that's used in this film is also the bed that Norma Desmond sleeps in Sunset Boulevard, which is a very unique fact. And I feel that the story of Phantom of the Opera and Sunset Boulevard are very similar, except your main character is a female in Sunset Boulevard, whereas in Phantom of the Opera, your titular character is a male. But what are the bad things about this film? Well, it's a little over the top. It's very cheesy. What do I mean by that? Well, Norman Carey, as much as I like the guy, because I've seen him in other Chaney films, he's kind of like that one guy you always see and you become friends with him, not because of like any strong bond, but because you just see him all the time. Like, I've seen him in The Unknown and Hunchback and this film. I'm just like, hey, it's Norman Carey. That's kind of cool. So, okay, what do I mean by this? There's actually a scene where the Persian, played by Arthur Edmund Carew, and then you have Raoul, played by Norman Carey, going down to the Paris Opera. They find a trapdoor, and they descend into the trapdoor. Now, when the Persian jumps down into the trapdoor, it's like about 10, 12 feet down. Well, I'm just estimating, but it's about that height. And he's like, pass me the lantern, Raoul. And Raoul literally passes him the lantern as if there's like no space between them. And what was it? Scott McQueen, the great film historian, one of the greatest film historians ever, in my opinion. On his commentary on this DVD, he's just like, Rupert Julian, master of time and space. And Rupert Julian was the director of this film. But what else does this film doesn't work? Well, everything is over the top, like I said. The chandelier crash is more, it should be desired for. I mean, it's not the greatest chandelier crash, but I do like it because it just really fast happens, boom, people are terrified. It doesn't seem like there's a body count, but apparently there was, which, whatever, it's still frightening to see a chandelier just crash. And actually that was inspired by a real-life event where one of the counterweights killed somebody in real life, which is kind of terrifying when you think about that this movie, part of that happened. So, I mean, what else is really cool about this movie is that there's a two-strip Technicolor sequence where it's like the masked ball in, you know what, let me just take a moment and I'll into color. Now, yeah, there's a two-strip Technicolor scene in the film, and it's one of the coolest scenes of the film because you get to see Lon Chaney in this costume in color. Now, apparently from what I've heard, Chaney made this mask and costume himself, which doesn't surprise me because he's just a man of all trades. Because he also made the mask that was on this guy, which is really cool, and he did that makeup. And when you can do all that, you're pretty solid. You're a keeper. And it's a great scene. And then when Chaney goes on top of the Paris Opera, they did this fully restored Handschigel process where basically, the best way I can describe the way the scene is, it's like everything else is blue, but Chaney is like a flaming red. And he's on top of the Paris Opera House in that costume with the hat, but without his mask. And it's like one of the coolest things ever. And he's just like, she betrayed me. And it's kind of awesome. Other things that happen with this movie, the ending in the Phantom of the Opera is that the Phantom gets redeemed by Christine's kiss. And he dies of a broken heart, or just a heart attack if you want to be a cynical bastard about it. And if you are thinking like that, then you really shouldn't be watching this either. But, in any case, that scene is lost apparently, and it was cut out because people were like, what? That guy's going to live? And he's a villain? No, keep him a devil to the end. So they add like this really cheesy chase sequence, and the only benefit of this chase sequence is that you get to see some of the pieces of the Notre Dame set, and the fact that Chaney, there's one scene where I loved where Chaney is running and running and running and running and running. Then he gets stopped at the river, at the Cyan River, I think it's called. I don't really care, but it's a river, and they all are terrified because it seems like he has a bomb in his hand. He's like holding something if he's gonna like throw something at them, and then he opens up and mocks them. He opens up his hand and mocks them because there's nothing in his hand. And I'm just like, wow, that's really cool. And the late, great Ray Bradbury made this analogy where he's just like, Chaney is like, had this great fist, and you think, oh no, it's death and he's going to kill me. And he opens up, it's nothing. which symbolizes Lon Chaney because his characters, as real as they feel, is just part of a movie. It's just part of a movie, part of his his grand illusion. And you're just terrified of nothing, basically. And I love that analogy because it works so well with Chaney's persona. So, what do I have to say about this film? Well, it's definitely my favorite Lon Chaney film. Am I going to say it's the best? Well, that depends on how you define best. If you want me to say what his best is, I'd probably have to say He Who Gets Slapped or The Unknown, because both of those films are quite excellent, because the supporting casts are actually quite good. But for my favorite, it has to be this one, the film that gave me an introduction to Lon Chaney, silent cinema, and all things that are awesome. Stay classy, guys, and I'll see you all later. And I'm going to do a Man from Nowhere review, and I'm also going to begin my top 5 favorite films, which will begin with City Lights. So, see you guys later.